Hi, my name is Meghan Merritt. I am from the North Carolina mountains. I've been here about 7 years. I'm married and have two great stepchildren, and I'm the executive director for the Corpening Memorial YMCA, which is part of the YMCA of Western North Carolina. We are a nonprofit dedicated towards strengthening communities. And Marion is a very small rural community. It's a Tier 1 county, very impoverished, and so I'm passionate about helping the people in that community thrive. In fact, most people live very close to a Y. 80% of Americans live within 5 miles of a YMCA. And over the whole United States, we serve 20.1 million people. The Y, as you may know, invented things like basketball, volleyball, and even Father's Day. We are the nation's largest nonprofit provider of child care, and the Y survives on primarily part-time employees. That's who we depend on to carry out our mission and our work. It's part of the reason the YMCA is such a successful brand. Just at my center alone, I have 7 full-time employees, and together we supervise 103 part-time employees. And so I'm passionate about meeting their needs. They're the face of our brand. That's who you see when you walk in the doors every day, and I want them to be just as successful as our full-time staff. And so today I'm going to try to go over some of the blessings and challenges of working with part-time employees.
So welcome Amberton students and Dr. Sanchez. Thank you for joining me as we look at part-time employee training and engagement. We're going to break down this discussion into 4 parts today. First, we'll start with the existing evidence. I'd like to explore effective workplace environments and discuss current trends with part-time employees. I'd also, of course, like to explore the challenges in working with part-time staff, and then we can move into some of the context and assumptions with those challenges. I'd like to explore some of the beliefs that part-time staff have around job satisfaction and retention, and also look at the prevalence of multiple generations that show up throughout part-time staff roles. Then I'll share my perspective on training and engagement plans and hopefully provide some solutions for part-time employees throughout our demographic. I also have some examples on cross-training and some reverse mentoring techniques that have been very successful. So I hope to share some of those success stories and tools with you today. So let's start with what we know. Today's workforce has experienced dramatic changes in composition and structure during the past few decades, including an increase of part-time employees. Recent estimates claim that 23% of the U.S. workforce is now comprised of part-time employees, which is a substantial increase from the 12% back in 1957. During challenging economic times, companies and organizations are constantly adjusting their structure to cope with budget cuts, health insurance costs, and labor laws. Many are increasing the amount of part-time positions, which we'll define as employees who work less than 30 hours per week, rather than increasing full-time positions. Part-time employees usually cost less than full-time employees. Of course, that cost may vary depending on the association or the benefit packages provided. Despite the growing number, part-time employees are still known for having high turnover, lack of engagement, and create a less effective workplace. So while using part-time employees might be a solution to reduce payroll, it could cause costs in other areas. You may not realize how many organizations survive off of part-time employees. Even just 20 years ago, part-time work was primarily suited for parents or students or retirees, and was most often found with organizations with temporary or seasonal outdoor work such as summer camps or theme parks or even landscaping. Now it is more common for all types of organizations to offer some sort of part-time work, including healthcare, manufacturing, education, government, and nonprofits. This trend is not only found in the United States, but also Australia, Canada, France, Germany, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. The majority, roughly 68%, of part-time workers are what's called involuntary. This means they don't want to be part-time and they are looking for full-time work, as seen on the graph pictured here. Naturally, these employees are less psychologically involved with the organization. They experience less positive work attitudes and tend to turn over more quickly, making it hard for companies to invest the time and resources into training. In fact, employee turnover costs organizations over $25 billion a year, and the cost to recruit and train a new employee costs over 500 times an hourly worker's salary. So the importance of research on part-time or non-standard employment relationships is becoming increasingly important as the numbers of part-time workers continue to grow. A study conducted by Jacob Bond, Galinsky, and Hill in 2008 showed the following: that job engagement, job satisfaction, employee retention, and strong employee mental health were 4 key outcomes of a successful workplace. The 6 factors that determine these outcomes are job autonomy, learning opportunities, supervisor support for job success, coworker team support for job success, involvement in decision making, and workplace flexibility. So the big question is, how do you get part-time employees to have this experience in a workplace so that they'll stay? Part-time employees are often on the front lines of a business. They represent a company's brand just as much as the full-time employees do. Take a look at this video clip from Core Capabilities Consulting on why training part-time staff is so crucial to our business success.
I'm very, very passionate about this piece because I do a lot of employee training, and I really do feel that, and the statistics show, which I'll share very shortly, how important it is about who you attract and who you retain. And I know a lot of you are in family businesses, and sometimes we just put people into positions just by virtue of who they are in the family. And that's okay, but you have to make sure that you're all adequately trained in the way that you want to serve your customers. And have you spoken about how do we handle escalations? How do we deal with conflict? Do we have the communication skills to diffuse issues and to diffuse that conflict? The other thing I see in a lot of especially as companies get larger, is they will train their full-time employees, but they won't train their part-time. How many of you do that? Confess right now. How many of you only train full-time or even provide training? Anybody provide training? Yes? Regular training? And it doesn't have to be in class, sit down and listen to this. It could be coaching, mentoring, really taking that time to have them job shadow you, right? This is how we do it around here is what they need to know, right? I see, and a lot of owners will say, you know what, my part-timers are going to leave. Well, what's the risk of that when they're at your store or when they're in your organization? Before they've left, what are they doing? What are they doing? They're dealing with your customers. One bad interaction that leaves them with that grumpy face we saw earlier, that's a reflection on your reputation and your brand. In fact, I would argue that it's your part-timers that need more training than anyone else, because you have to fast-track them into the organization. You know they're only there maybe for the summer because it's a summer job for them. But how they treat your customers is a direct reflection on the reputation of your organization. So all levels of the organization have to speak as one consistent voice.
When we think about some of the primary assumptions associated with part-time employees, it's easy to blame the high turnover and lack of engagement on a few obvious areas: lower wages, lack of job satisfaction, and less buy-in to the overall mission of the organization. However, you may be surprised what part-time employees are really saying about these common assumptions. Some researchers argue that compensation is still the number one factor for determining employee retention and job satisfaction. A qualitative study conducted in Augusta, Georgia recently revealed that employee compensation in terms of salary, benefits, and incentives is still the most important factor in determining employee retention and satisfaction. The results stated that 30% of participants believed that low wages contributed to employee turnover, and 50% believed that low salaries make employees dissatisfied with their jobs. Additionally, 20% believe that few or no benefits contribute to employee turnover. In fact, in a study conducted by Jacqueline and Milton Mayfield, the median hourly wage for part-time employees was only 56% of their full-time counterparts. This, combined with the lack of benefits, lack of training, and less employee protection, would obviously lead to increased turnover. But when comparing this to the Sturman and Walsh study out of Cornell University in New York in 2014, it would seem fairly evident that hourly wage is just as important as receiving the desired amount of hours worked. Researchers found that some employees may need more non-work time and want to work fewer hours, whereas others may find themselves frustrated and stressed over working fewer hours and earning less money. It's important for management to know what an employee's desired work schedule is and to stay diligent to not underwork or overwork that individual at the needs of the company. This requires management to take extra time to find an employee's best fit, ensuring that the job matches the work hours desired of the individual. Deviating from an employee's desired number of hours can certainly have negative consequences. Working more hours than desired provides greater compensation, but reduces an employee's access to time and potentially strains an employee's work-life balance. Alternatively, working fewer hours than desired negatively impacts the compensation sought by employees. The study conducted in Augusta, Georgia goes on to reveal that the second most prevalent reason employees leave their job is a lack of a supportive working environment. The results revealed that 20% of participants believed a positive, encouraging work environment contributes to retaining employees. Fostering a supportive work environment in which employee morale is high is important to employee retention and motivation. This was also determined in the Brigham Young University study mentioned earlier as one of the 6 factors influencing job satisfaction and retention. It seems that identifying motivation, positive working conditions, and overall team spirit is a driving factor in retaining part-time employees. However, there is evidence to suggest that some part-time employees have more job satisfaction than full-time employees. In 2007, Kevin Egan took an in-depth look at community college faculty, both full and part-time, believing that full-time faculty would have more job satisfaction. However, much to his surprise, part-time faculty were even more satisfied than their full-time counterparts in their average workload. They also held stable employment records, averaging 7 years with the same employer, similar to that of full-time faculty. A study conducted in Europe in 2011 shows that employees in marginal part-time employment with considerably reduced working hours were the most satisfied with their job. The majority of part-time workers in this study were women, and the researchers determined that many of them did not desire full-time work due to balancing their efforts of raising small children at home. This reiterates the hours fit concept mentioned earlier. The University of Paderborn in Germany states that part-time employees who attribute high importance to family roles are more satisfied with their job than part-time employees who focus on work roles. Organizations who employ several part-time staff would benefit from seeking employees who actually desire to be part-time due to balancing other responsibilities at home. Results indicate that employees who desire to be part-time have much more job satisfaction because it supports their lifestyle rather than hindering it. A final assumption is that most part-time employees are young millennials. Yes, young high school and college graduates may be using a part-time job to enter the workforce and get in the door at a career that they desire, but there is quite a spectrum of age demographic among part-time workers, especially with the baby boomers headed towards retirement, as you can see from the graph pictured here. Different generations of people come into the workforce with unique perceptions of work ethic, values, gender beliefs, and work-life balance. If companies are able to identify and work on using increased diversity to gain a competitive advantage, employees' collective differences can benefit the company in many ways. Some strategies to effectively train a multi-generational workforce include effective feedback loops, coaching for a wide variety of backgrounds, including age, education, ethnicity, physical ability, and race. And just recently, reverse mentoring has been highlighted as an effective tool for fostering cross-generational learning. After reviewing the assumptions about part-time employees and looking at our current employment trends, it's only going to get more imperative that organizations prepare for training their part-time employees with just as much energy and intention as they do with their full-time staff. Here are a few best practices that I've discovered for effective part-time training staff models. This one should be fairly obvious, but if employees are working part-time to meet the needs of their families, attend school, or juggle multiple part-time jobs, then you have to offer training on a flexible schedule that meets their needs. This might mean offering both daytime and evening or weekend options for the traditional in-person trainings. On the surface, this seems easy, right? Offer training for staff every once in a while on an evening or a weekend. But if your instructors who are offering the training are in a full-time role and typically work regular business hours during the week, it can be difficult to find instructors to accommodate those needs. Organizations need to keep this in mind when identifying trainers for part-time staff courses. Perhaps setting expectations about how many off-hour trainings will be required and how flexible their general work hours are would set up that trainer with a more realistic training platform. Management should also take into consideration the lack of engagement that part-time employees may have due to their primary focus being on their home life, school, retirement, or another job. Add a later evening training on top of an already packed day, and you've got tired, stressed, and disengaged part-time employees who are not looking forward to sitting through a 2-hour training workshop. Trainers will need to work extra hard to make these trainings simple, effective, and engaging. There are many ways to do this, including technology, snacks, incentives for participation, etc. One web-based technology that I've found particularly effective for this type of training environment is called Kahoot. You can create a free learning game made from a series of multiple choice questions and add in videos, images, and diagrams to your questions to amplify the engagement, and then play the game in the group training session. However, instead of calling out the answers or writing them, players answer them on electronic devices such as a smartphone, and it shows what percentage of players got the question right on the screen. This aids the instructor in knowing what percentage of the room is digesting the information and if there are still learning gaps that need to be addressed before the end of the training. This tool is also useful for large companies that span several locations because all employees can play at once as long as they have internet access. Technological advancements will continue to shape where and how we learn, especially as the cost of these devices, social media, and mobile learning continues to decrease. The use of these technologies can significantly reduce training costs, while still allowing trainers to build in many desirable features, such as practice, feedback, and reinforcement. The content of these smart products can be changed quickly to make it appropriate for global audiences, and features like instant messaging, networking sites, blogs, and social software make knowledge sharing and collaboration easy. Part-time staff are often in need of support, and usually they've been officially onboarded, and there may be times when there isn't a supervisor or a trainer on site or available to help. So it's essential that these employees have access to traditional or additional training that can be retrieved on demand when additional info is needed. This might look like a SharePoint site, a wiki page, chat rooms, blogs, Facebook, YouTube, and even Vimeo. These tools have changed the landscape of employee training because of their ability to offer low-cost, accessible programs on an as-needed basis, regardless of geographic region. Some employees even have the advantage of being able to control when and where they receive training, providing flexibility while still maintaining a consistency of information. Trainers will need to be able to understand this technology and determine the best way to keep the training effective and engaging. In a case study on user satisfaction of e-learning conducted by Capisi and Capinci, results show that as long as technical difficulties are not overwhelming, e-learning participants have more positive attitudes about technology-mediated education, they're satisfied with their experience, and they're willing to use it again. In the comparison with students who do not use e-learning systems, the students who use e-learning have better performance after training, which leads to better organizational effectiveness. Businesses are also demanding that training courses be shorter, faster, and only focus on the necessary content. Training department responsibilities will likely include a bigger focus on designing systems that employees can access as needed for information, especially with companies who employ part-time employees or experience a lot of turnover. Companies don't want to invest a lot of resources in an employee who may only stay for a few weeks. Training departments will need to provide mechanisms to sustain employees once they're on the job and encounter situations, challenges, or policies that they're unfamiliar with just because they have not been with the company long enough yet. These systems will need to address both the tactical aspects of the job as well as developing interpersonal skills and understanding multiple facets of the company to give the employee potential for success. Social networking technology is also helpful to create collaborative learning and training environments. This could be particularly useful for employees who share a certain area of focus called a community of practice. For example, an employer might set up an online discussion board for employees who all work at the front desk of a hotel. This would allow the employees to share knowledge, resources, and best practices around their work experiences, even if those employees do not work in the same state or region. If the topics of the discussion board stay relevant to the goals of the company, it can significantly enhance learning that couldn't necessarily be duplicated in a traditional classroom training format. It can also provide cost savings by minimizing travel, instructor fees, and classroom space. However, in order for this type of social media to be effective, it should be closely monitored and perhaps even incentivized. The tool would only be effective if employees actually use it, which means that employers would need to allow time for employees to participate while working. If the social networking tool is not monitored or it's open to other public users like Facebook or Twitter, some employees may take advantage of that opportunity. Glass and Lee at Bryant University surveyed employees who are encouraged to use Facebook and instant messaging for work-related purposes and found that over half, 54%, admit to having used it for personal purposes as well. This could be remedied by limiting access to company employees, supervisor or leadership engagement with the tool, and then rewarding employees who produce strong results due to the learning they've acquired through the tool. Conseco and Altman conducted a study on training and development processes within the Department of Administrative Leadership at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Their objective was to see if they could create a culture change that supported a stronger learning environment. In order to create this, they knew they would need the support of their IT department, to develop a platform that would enable employees to share information electronically. The findings in their study suggest that if key leadership personnel are supportive of managing this type of information exchange, it can be very effective in shifting the culture towards more of a learning organization. The use of social media can also be a great resource for capturing valuable knowledge from tenured employees. In order to prepare for the retirement of the baby boomer generation, we have to create learning environments to pass down knowledge from expert employees. Many organizations have employees that have worked with them for so long that the tasks of that particular individual may not be well documented and might even be lost if that particular employee was to leave or retire. In order to preserve the organization, companies are realizing that they need to develop a process for capturing this valuable knowledge in order to train future employees. Wiki sites, Facebook, and other social collaboration tools are allowing tenured employees to share their knowledge with the younger generation. However, it's not just those old hats who have all of the answers. Jack Welch, General Electric's former CEO, introduced a reverse mentoring program in 1999, which has become a best practice among several large corporations, including Dell, Procter & Gamble, and Time Warner. Reverse mentoring involves the pairing of a younger, junior employee acting as a mentor to share expertise with an older, senior colleague as the mentee. Not only is there an emphasis on leadership development, but this specific form of mentoring emphasizes the sharing of cultural and generational differences. If properly matched and supported by executive leadership, a formal reverse mentoring program can provide a deeply effective professional development experience. The executives at General Electric found that reverse mentoring increased innovation, effective use of technology, understanding differing work values, and approaches to communication. And lastly, it's not uncommon for managers to struggle giving constructive feedback to a part-time employee. It's always difficult to share with others where they are not performing well or need improvement. Personally, I believe that giving feedback, especially negative feedback, can be the most difficult part of being a trainer. It requires strong communication skills, empathy, and impartiality. Using an objective evaluation tool can help provide clarity for both the trainer and the employee. For example, in my work with the YMCA, we have several resources that we use with employees to develop leadership competencies. Take a look at this quick video clip that shows some simple tools for competency development.
I'm the first person that people see when they walk in the door, so you have to listen and how you communicate with the people that have complaints or concerns, and how to listen to kids. And I like having them come in and us talking about their situation and see how I can help or see how the Y can help them.
A few years ago, our association identified Listen First as a critical tool in developing staff. And so we have begun a very systematic approach to ensuring that all of our staff are trained in Listen First tools and Listen First techniques so that they're better able to serve our members. If we're not using what we've learned in Listen First, we're really not getting at what the member needs. We're only telling them what we want them to know. And we're not really getting at what brought them into the YMCA. It's one of those things that if you don't work on it, then you're not going to ever master it. And so it's part of her daily job to serve the members. If she's doing it in a way like improving her communication skills through Listen First, she's in essence improving her competencies and helping her to become a better member and staff person.
Developing leadership competencies requires a combination of training, coaching, and practicing. The Suncoast Y used the leader-level workbook and development planning cards with part-time staff, like Shannon, to intentionally practice what they learned in Listen First, to further support their development of the communication competency.
We've run the numbers in our association, and I think the statistics show that 90% of our staff are part-time staff. If we don't give them the training and the tools that they need, then we failed them, and in essence, we failed our members. When you're just meeting to talk about development and you don't have a real tool to use, it's harder to really wrap your head around how you're going to accomplish this. Once you have a tool that you can use, it's easier and it's more attainable. I think one of the things that's helpful about this tool is that it gives you a starting point.
The Leader Level Workbook and planning cards are a simple, fast way to connect our leader level and part-time staff to leadership competency development and help them identify how they strengthen community and can grow as a leader through the work they do at the Y. Using the Leader Level Workbook and planning cards is simple. Start with a competency card sort or the big picture deck to help them identify their passions and how they strengthen community. Then help them choose one competency to develop. They can use the planning card to write down what success in that competency looks like in their role and build a development plan.
I think it's great. I think it's a great opportunity. Any kind of training and skills is going to benefit anyone that's trying to further their career or even just make their current job a better experience. They learn more. A member will come up to you or a potential member, and it's a lot simpler to get information out now that I've had the training. Now I know how to ask more open-ended questions, and so they give you more information to go by so you can help them and make their YMCA experience a better one. I've loved every second. I've only been here about 7 months, but I do hope to continue on the Y career path.
Visit Training and Leadership Development at yexchange.org to access and learn about how you can use these tools with your staff.
So to wrap up this presentation today, I wanted to kind of recap what we've discussed. First, we looked at salary and how important it is to still keep an eye on those part-time wages and make sure they're appropriate for the work that we're asking our part-time staff to complete. We also want to watch our hours and make sure that there's a best fit for those particular employees. We have a tendency in organizations to work towards the organization's needs and not necessarily towards the individual's needs. And we need to keep in mind that if those employees want to work part-time, it's probably for a reason, and we need to see if we can find a role that best fits their particular lifestyle and needs. Likewise, if they want to work more than what we have for them, we need to be very clear on our expectations and what's available up front, and know that they are probably going to continue to seek other employment if we can't provide them the amount of hours that they are hoping to get. A supportive work environment is clearly a huge part of making part-time employees successful. And so some of the aspects of that include flexible scheduling to kind of support that work-life balance. And that might include nights and weekends, which means that we need to take that into account when hiring trainers and producing those trainings, and make sure that they're relevant and accessible to our part-time staff. We also might want to consider offering training on demand, or giving some sort of access to an electronic portal that could provide training and education as needed, so that a supervisor doesn't always have to be right next to them. Obviously, we've seen the multiple demographics in terms of generations that span part-time employees, and so we want to encourage interaction and see what kind of strengths we can find from really pairing young employees with older or more experienced employees. That's going to require coaching for a wide variety of backgrounds, and we might even consider implementing some sort of community of practice where employees of a similar work can come together and talk and exchange ideas and thoughts and successes and really encourage each other in that practice. We also discussed reverse mentoring and how important that tool or even just cross-training can be, so that employees really get experience working both with different varieties of people and in different roles, so that they understand how the organization works as one entity. Some of the tools that we can use to do that, whether they're electronic or paper, the most important part is that they're objective and impartial, and just using a tool instead of trying to talk them through every little piece of development and training. Finding some tools that work for you and your organization is going to be key to making part-time employee training possible. Thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate your time, and I've listed my professional references here should you need any additional information. Thank you.